What's going on, everybody? It's Carmine from Barmine Tech, and today we're going to be talking about how to set up a reverse proxy for your Homelab or the services that you self-host. So pretty much in a summary, a reverse proxy just makes it that you can share out services from your home, proxy them through another server without having to share or distribute your public IP info or anything else from your house. They would just get the IP info from the proxy server and go from there to access the services that you're sharing out. So real quick, I'll just pull up a real quick summary of what a reverse proxy is just to get a better explanation if you're not, if I didn't explain it well enough. So over here I just wrote up what Cloudflare describes a reverse proxy as. A reverse proxy is a server that sits in front of web servers and forwards client requests to those web servers. Reverse proxies are typically implemented to help increase security, performance, and reliability. And then there's more, and of course you can go on to read it. So really the main idea is that we're going to put this reverse proxy in place in front of our main web servers, whether it's any of the services that you host in your Homelab, just to add a little bit of additional security and make it a little bit easier when it comes to sharing out your services like Overseer or anything else with your friends, and just try to make it a little more safe for you hosting it at your house. A couple things you're going to need for this video. We're going to need some sort of public box, whether it's a VPS, a Linode machine, an AWS server, anything that you might be hosting. You're going to need something outside of your house. So for this video I'm going to be using a Linode machine, but for when I actually run one I'm going to be using a VPS. So it's up to you which one you're going to want to use. We're going to be using Docker and NPM, so like always we're going to be using the Pi self-hosted template. It's the easiest way to do it, so that's how I'm going to be setting it up. We're going to be using NGINX Proxy Manager. Now there are multiple ways to be setting up a reverse proxy. You could use Swag, you could use Traffic, you could use Caddy. I mean, there's a whole bunch. The possibilities are endless. This might be a topic we're going to hit on in the future again, but today we're going to be working with NGINX Proxy Manager. It's something that we've covered on the channel before. I'm familiar with how to use it, and it works really well, and just makes setting everything up a lot simpler than some of the other products, I think. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to need a WireGuard VPN tunnel set up from the house to be able to go out to whatever box we're using, whether it's a VPS or a Linode server. One thing to go along with all this is we are making a box that's going to have direct access back to our house. So security is going to be very important for this aspect. I'd recommend installing fail2ban on the VPS you're using. You're going to need some sort of multi-factor to access the Linux machine, which can be done. I highly recommend setting up IP tables to block out all public IPs from being able to access any of the admin ports, SSH, anything else, except your public IP, of course. So you could access the Portainer dashboard or anything else. But you want to make sure that everything else is being blocked, because again, you have a VPN tunnel straight back to your house. So if your VPS does get compromised, somebody's going to have direct access back into your entire Homelab and the rest of your house. So please make sure that the security is set up very well and that you're locking everything down so only you could access it, other than the services that you're trying to share. So if you're trying to share Overseer or something else, make sure that those are accessible, but make sure everything else is locked down just to keep security at a priority for this project. Other than that, I think we're all about set, so let's get started with this project. So to start off, I just got a quick Linode machine, so mine could be whatever. This is just for my test, but it would be your VPS or whatever you might be using for your reverse proxy. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here and copy my IP. I'm going to open up PuTTY. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so everybody could read. We're going to SSH into the VPS. First thing I'm going to do is do an apt upgrade and update. So I'm going to run the upgrades and the updates, and then we'll be right back. Okay, I forgot one more thing while I was running those updates. You're also going to need a domain. So whether you want to use Cloudflare or you want to use some other service to get your domains, you can, but you're going to need a domain for this project as well. Sorry, I forgot about that earlier. I know there's going to be comments as well saying that, oh, why don't you use like Cloudflare tunnels, or you could use Cloudflare proxying through there. Yes, you can, but I'm just showing another way to do it because this is a project that has a lot of possible ways to accomplish the same goal. So I'm just going to wait for those updates to get going, and then we'll be right back to getting this all set up. Okay, so my machine is all up to date now, so I just came over here to the Pi self-hosted GitHub, and we worked this in the past, so if you have any issues or questions about how to set up, I'll put a card up in the corner about the process of setting up Docker and Portainer. I'm just going to run through this really quickly. So I'm just going to grab the first script that goes to install Docker and the other needed services. So I'm just going to kind of run through this really quick, and then we'll be back when it's all done, just to try to make this video so it's not super long. So I'll be back after I get Docker and Portainer set up. Okay, so I ran through the rest of the install. You can see I have Docker and Portainer all set up. Now, you don't need to use Portainer if you don't want to. I use it because it's easier when it comes to the management. If you're better with the Docker CLI and you want to run all this through there, you of course can, but I'm just going to do it this way. There's options for all this project the whole way through. So I'm just going to click on my local, and then we're going to come over to templates. We're going to search for NGINX. And as you can see, there's a lot of different options. So pretty much you could get this option over here, which has Go Access Charts. This is going to give you another way to kind of monitor what's going through. And then this is more of the basic one. Today we're going to be using just the regular NGINX Proxy Manager v2 with SQLite. So I'm going to come over here. Everything's already all set up in the container, so all we got to hit is deploy. We're going to give this a minute or so to deploy, and then we'll be back when it's all set up. So like I was saying earlier, the security aspect of all this is really important. Since we pretty much are exposing a tunnel from our house out to a public server, you want to really make sure you lock everything down. So I'm not going to go over all the security stuff that you could do for this because there are a lot of different possibilities, and I don't want to make this a 45-minute long video. So things I would recommend doing are installing fail demand, using IP tables, and multi-factor on the Linux server as well. So at least if somebody tries SSH, then they can't. They have to hit the multi-factor. I'll put a card in the top corner as well for how to set up fail demand and the IP tables. There's more ways to set up IP tables as well to kind of protect who can have access to what. I really recommend using ChatGPT. I know it sounds silly, but ChatGPT is a really good way to help make out some IP table rules if you're not familiar with how to do it. You can kind of just go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this. I want to block all access to port 9000, 9001, and maybe whatever other ports except from my public IP, and it will give you the IP table rules that you need to enter into your Linux server to block all that traffic, and it works really well. I've been doing it for a little bit for some of my public servers, and I've had good experience with it, so I really recommend doing that. But again, I really recommend locking down the security of this server because it's important. Now we're going to go into how to set up the WireGuard on the VPS so it has a tunnel back to your house. So I'm going to work on that right now. So over here we can see the NGINX containers all set up, and that's good. Now we're just going to go over into WireGuard and grab a config so we can set up the WireGuard tunnel to the VPS from our house. So I grabbed my comp file for WireGuard. DigitalOcean has a really good article of how to set up WireGuard on Ubuntu 2004. The idea is the same on all the newer distros as well. So to start in the beginning of this, it's going to show you how to set up like as a WireGuard server, but we don't really have to worry about all that. We can come down to where it shows how to set it up as a client. So you can see this is all for a WireGuard server. Now over here you can see there's the peer. So right here we scroll down to step 7, it's going to show how to configure WireGuard peer. And over here it's going to go through the setup for that. So I'm just going to kind of split screen again, and then we'll start doing the install for WireGuard on this box. Now, of course, I'm using WireGuard because it's what we use a lot on the channel, but if you're more of like an OpenVPN, or you want to use Tailscale, or you want to use anything else, you of course can. I'm just using WireGuard because it's what I'm familiar with. So over here again I have that DigitalOcean article up. I already did a sudo apt update, but we'll run it one more time, and then the next command is going to be sudo apt install WireGuard. So you can either type it out or you can copy and paste. It's fine. I'm just going to paste to make it easier. So it's just going to ask me if I want to do it. I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to go through this install. It's pretty quick, and then we're now going to come over to the next set of commands. So the next one's going to be generating some keys and writing them into the directory. Just going to clear that again. We're going to paste that in, and now I have a key. Now I know somebody might be like, ooh, you just shared everybody your key. It's okay, because this box won't exist by the time you see this video, so don't worry. We're going to paste that in, so all that's doing is just changing the permissions to the key. Now one more thing we have to do is create a public key file, so I'm just going to paste that in. We're all set. Now the only other thing we have left to do is to make the config. So this command over here is going to make the wg0conf. This will be what the VPS is going to be using for WireGuard to connect back to your house or wherever you have it connecting. So you could just paste that in, hit enter, it's going to open up a file. This is where you're going to paste in your WireGuard config that you set up from your house. So if you set it up as WG Easier or WG Dashboard, you made a config for a proxy server, this is where you're going to get that WireGuard.conf file, and you're going to paste it in here. So I'm going to do that, and we'll be right back. So I just took care of that. One thing you could do in the WireGuard config is it has the allowed IP option, and depending on your IP ranges for your services you're trying to share, you can limit out how many IPs this tunnel will actually have access to right there. So let's say you have like 5 services you're trying to share. You could go on to like a subnet calculator, and you could take those IPs. So let's say it's like 4 through 9, and you can kind of piece up the network and figure out the network portion that would fit the best for those services you're trying to share. And you could change the allowed IPs in the config, so it won't give access to your whole network. It will only give access to those IPs. It's just another option when it comes to the locking down the tunnel a little bit more. But now all this is all set, so we can pretty much come through, and they have some round commands, which I'm not going to worry about. And then we could just scroll down a little bit more, and it's going to have how to set up to run WireGuard. So we're going to do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, so this guy does have a lot of stuff in it because it's going back and forth, set up a server and a client, so that's fine. So the next command we're going to be using is sudo WireGuard. So we see it doesn't return anything, which is okay. We're going to install the resolve.conf, so we're going to let that run, and then we should be able to bring up the tunnel. So I think we should be all set. We're just going to scroll through this one more time, make sure I'm not missing anything, but I think we're all set. So I should be able to ping my router, and I am. So we see we're all set, our WireGuard tunnel is working. So now my proxy has access back to my house and can start working. So we're all set on that part. So now we can really go through and start setting up the rest of the reverse proxy. I know we're jumping around a lot back and forth with different parts of this project, so if you're kind of confused or anything, just try to rewind the video back a little bit and watch it through again to try to see if you can understand it, and if not, just drop a comment and we'll try to get it all sorted out. But now we're going to work on the next part, which is setting up NGINX Proxy Manager. So like I said, we're going to be using NGINX Proxy Manager for this, and it's something we've talked about in the past, but it's a really good tool, and I like it as a way to kind of work with a project like this. So you can see the container's running, and over here we have ports 8181. We're going to click on that. It's going to open up the NGINX portal. So the default credentials are admin@example.com, and the default password is change me. So we're going to hit not now. I don't want to save it. We're going to update this. So I'm going to do borrowmytech@gmail.com. That's fine. We're going to leave this all default. We're going to hit save, and then we're going to set a password. So now we have our account all set up. We can start working. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to need that domain that we previously got from Cloudflare or whatever else. So we're just going to come over to SSL certificates, and here we're going to add it. So what this is going to make it is it's going to take that domain. It's going to get a Let's Encrypt cert for us, and then we can start using it to actually set up our proxy host. So we're going to click on add SSL certificate. Over here we're going to type in our domain name. So I'm just going to go grab mine. You can make sure you have whatever yours is, and then we'll go through how to set this up. So the domain that I'm using today is barmindtest.net, and then we're going to hit add, and then the next one's going to be star.barmindtest.net. So we can test the server reach. I don't always have this work, which is okay. We're going to check off for a DNS challenge, and you come over here, you can click your provider. So I'm using Cloudflare, and there's a way you can get an API token. You just kind of go into your profile on Cloudflare, and then in there you can get your API tokens. If you're not sure how to do it, you can just look it up. It's really easy. There'll be a guide. You can go grab your API token, link it up, and drop it right in here, and then we should be all set. So I'm going to do that right now. So after you get your token, you can paste it in over here. You'll be all set. The other thing we might want to do is set up propagation seconds and then hit I agree. Now, one more thing I forgot. Before you just go in and do this, we just need to set some of the DNS. So you just need to make sure you have like an A record that points to your VPS, your Linode machine, whatever you're using. I know we're kind of jumping around again, and before you do this, it's going to fail if it doesn't have a DNS record. So just make sure that you set that DNS record on your domain. Okay, so after you have your A record all set up, and we can just come over here. Like I said, we're going to set propagation seconds to 120. This just gives it a little time in case it times out. It's mixed on the results. Sometimes it could be 0 and it'll work. Sometimes you got to add a little more time. It just kind of depends on the DNS settings of if it can reach out to the server or not. We're going to click save. We're going to let this work, and then we'll be right back. If you get an error saying it couldn't check or whatever it is, make sure the DNS record is set, and then maybe add some time. Like I said, 120 seems to be the sweet spot, but we'll just give it a few minutes, and it's going to try to get the SSL cert from Let's Encrypt, and then we should be all set to start working. Okay, so after a couple minutes, I got mine. You can see over here we have it all set up. Like I said, if yours errors out, says it doesn't work, just set those propagation seconds to like 120 or somewhere around there, and it should go through, and we're all set. So now what we could do is start setting up for our actual reverse proxy hosts. So you just kind of need to pick out what services you might want to share out. I'm going to use Overseer just because it's something that I actually work with. I share with some of my friends. So it just would be something easy to proxy out. Of course, you could choose whatever you might want to do. You could use like Vault Warden or Minecraft or whatever else. I don't know. So it's going to be completely up to you what you want to do. We're just going to come over to host. We're going to go to proxy host. Okay, so now we're all set to start making our actual reverse proxy host. So one other thing we need to do is make CNAME records on our domain we're using. So if you're using Cloudflare, you can just go in there and make a CNAME record for whatever you're trying to share. I'm going to be working with Overseer for this example. You could be using whatever you want to use. And then from there, you just need to make a CNAME record. So like I made mine Overseer, and that's going to go through and be proxied through. Cloudflare also has a proxy option, which I have enabled. So it's going to proxy the address again. You might need to mess with this and kind of figure out the sweet spot of whether proxy is going to work for you or not, since we are kind of jumping through a lot of tunnels to hit our service. So some services might not like it, some might, you never know. So you're just gonna have to mess with it a little bit to see which settings work best for you. But like I said, I set my CNAME record, so now we're all set to start working. We're gonna come here and click add proxy host, and then we're going to set our domain name. So I'm gonna do overseer.barmindtest.net. We're gonna click on add. And then from here, we're going to fill out the IP of what's going to forward. So for me, it's going to be going to my NAS and then the port. Now over here, we can check off some of these options to block common exploits, cache assets, stuff like this. These are options you're going to have to mess with. And over here for the scheme, so some services use HTTP, some use HTTPS. I haven't really been able to narrow down how to find the sweet spot for which one works the best when you're setting up the proxy host. I'm going to leave it at HTTP. We're going to test it out, and then we'll come back. The next thing we're going to do is go to SSL. We're going to click on that cert that we used. I'm going to click force SSL, and we'll come back if we need to make any changes. I'm going to click save. So now you can see that that proxy host is already set. And if I come over here, we should be able to open it up, and it seems to not at the moment, so we're going to test this out. Okay, so like I was saying, sometimes it doesn't like how we set up these settings, so you got to play with a little bit to figure out what works best. So I have HTTP set for the scheme. I still have all these set, but SSL, what was causing it to not work. So I just unchecked SSL, hit save, and now you can see over here, it brings me over to my Overseer server. And if I open up a command line, if we do ping overseer.barmindtest.net, you can see that that's not my public IP at my house. So the reverse proxy is working, and it's actually proxying out the addresses the way we want, so it's not hitting it that way. So now that's our first reverse proxy host that's all set up. Now if you want to keep adding more, you can. You just come over to click add proxy, and then here just keep filling it out the same way. Now make sure that as you keep going, you keep adding the CNAME records to go along with it, so you have it on your domain. It can actually resolve through and be used, and then just keep setting it up the same way. You add in the IP, the port, and then unfortunately you gotta play a little game of figuring out HTTP, HTTPS, if you force SSL or not. Whatever works best for your setup. You'll get an error right away if it doesn't. So this is the only thing that I've had to kind of mess around with to figure out the best options. But now we have a reverse proxy working, and we're able to share out our services and have a little more security behind it. So that's how we set up a reverse proxy using NGINX Proxy Manager. Like I said, there's a ton of different ways to do this, but today we did it with NGINX Proxy Manager. If you're going to be doing this, just please make sure that you lock down your VPS or whatever the jump server you're using is. Make sure you have failban, IP table rules, or UFW rules, whatever you're going to be using for the firewall. Just make sure there's a bunch of security in place, because it is using a direct tunnel right back to your house. So you don't want somebody able to get in and compromise your home network. This is a topic that we'll probably be covering again because, like I said, there are multiple ways to be setting up this reverse proxy. So in the future, we might be checking out some of the other options and go from there. But that's how we use today with NGINX Proxy Manager. I want to thank you all for watching. As always, I'll have links to all the gear in my Homelab below. I'll have a link to the Discord server. And I want to just thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video.